AOC officially endorses President Biden for his reelection bid and offers her candid thoughts on his presidency so far. Intrigued? Then click that like, subscribe, and the alert bell, and enjoy the video. All right, folks, so this seems to be good news for President Biden and his reelection prospects because he has earned the public endorsement of the progressive powerhouse Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who is arguably the most prominent and most famous progressive in Congress, besides her counterpart in the Senate, Bernie Sanders, who also has officially endorsed President Biden, but that was a matter of months ago. Now, this endorsement comes on Pod Save America, which is a podcast, a political podcast led by Jon Favreau. Not that Jon Favreau, not the guy from The Mandalorian and the Marvel Cinematic Universe, not Happy Hogan, but this Jon Favreau, who was President Obama's or one of President Obama's speechwriters. He asked the question, she gives the endorsement. I want to play that clip. And then we're going to play another clip in which AOC offers her candid thoughts, good and bad, about President Biden's presidency so far. So let's get first to the endorsement.
So president's only primary opponents are Marianne Williamson and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Haven't been any rumors about anyone else even thinking about jumping in. Will you be supporting Joe Biden for re-election?
I believe given that field, yes.
So now some people might be like, wow, that's not exactly a full-throated endorsement, but hey, it's an endorsement all the same. It's a yes. And President Biden should be pleased with that, especially since, of course, he is relatively unpopular and his popularity has not changed. And we have no margin for error, folks. We need every left-leaning moderate and every progressive that is an eligible voter to turn out in force in 2024 in order to prevent the fascist Republican Party from taking over the country and potentially destroying democracy as we know it, because, of course, they're an authoritarian cult with no limiting principle and a terrible agenda. Now, the second clip I want to play is in which Jon Favreau asked AOC, hey, listen, what are your thoughts on President Biden's, presidency so far? And I do want to be candid here. I'm sure, to some extent or another, AOC is probably going to be very strategic and very political, so to speak, about her thoughts because, and we've seen this over, I think AOC was the first elected in 2018, so she has been in office for 5 years. And she has matured in so many ways as a political operator. A lot of people demeaned her intelligence when she ran. They said she was rhetorically effective firebrand, but she wouldn't be an effective legislator. She wouldn't be an effective congresswoman. And history has vindicated her. She's one of the most terrifying, and I mean this in a positive way, incisive speakers in congressional committees, right? When rich people, when Republicans, when conservatives, when fascists sit before her in congressional hearings, you can feel their sphincters clench. Like you can just feel it collectively. You can almost hear the vacuum seal because she is an incisive interrogator. She makes her points very well, and she's still a progressive powerhouse. But she's also, she doesn't want to depress the vote. She doesn't want to upset the apple cart. She has to pick and choose her words carefully. But I think, given the answers she provides here, we can say it's relatively candid because she's not effuse in her praise. She's not like, oh my God, Biden's my dream come true as far as a progressive president, nor does she say he's the worst president in the history of civilization. It's a relatively candid answer, which is really good for AOC because I think that also reinforces her brand as an authentic voice to power. So let's hear the question. Let's hear her answer. We'll unpack it.
In general, how do you think President Biden has handled his job over the last 4 years?
I think he's done quite well, given the limitations that we have. I do think that there are ebbs and flows, as there are in any presidency. There are areas that I think were quite strong when he came right out of the gate with the American Rescue Plan, and of course the Inflation Reduction Act was a massive step in terms of our climate agenda. But, there are also areas that I think could have gone better. The president and I think the Democratic Party in general continues to struggle with immigration. We don't want to own this issue. We talk a big game when we're in the minority and when we're trying to win an election, but I don't feel like we are there when it comes to what we actually pass. The DREAM Act is now over 20 years old and it's still not passed. And a lot of, there's plenty of other issues as well, even with what is happening with asylees, the ability to grant people basic work authorization so that they can work while they are going through their legal processing. There's an enormous amount of political resistance to that. And And we want to make sure that we are expanding that fight and working for the coalition that elects this party. So, I do think, of course, there's so much more that we could do, so much more that we should do. We have major structural issues in this country, and I think it starts with the United States Senate. And I think that until we have senators that are willing to stand up and stare the filibuster in the eye and stare a lot of structural issues about the Senate in the eye, the United States Senate will be what holds back this country from an enormous amount of progress. And I think that we need to have a real conversation about that, not just in the structure, but also in the culture. The culture of the United States Senate is.
So I could keep going. I think she makes a very eloquent, sophisticated case. But as you see, as she susses out her answers in real time, it becomes less of a criticism of Joe Biden as an executive, Joe Biden as the president, and more, kind of segues into frustrations with Democratic Party as an institution, as the Senate as an institution, and then broader society as well. So it kind of flows downwards. So I think she offered a pretty candid answer, and she gave certain examples. She's like, right out the gate, the president hit the ground running with the American Rescue Plan, and then more recently with the Inflation Reduction Act, addressing climate change provisions, things of that nature. But she also says that as a political leader, she doesn't like what he's done or what he's failed to do with immigration. Now, I'll point out, there are limitations to what the president can do with respect to immigration because, again, immigration policy, the day-to-day provisions are obviously set by the president, and President Biden has set or has made improvements there. He has helped streamline the asylum process. He has gotten commitments from Mexico, billions of dollars, as a matter of fact, to increase border security. He has launched this app, which makes it easier for asylum seekers to start an asylum claim. He has increased the number through diplomatic negotiations with other countries who will accept asylum seekers if they can't get into the United States. So other South American countries will accept those who are seeking asylum in the United States while the immigration process unfolds. But at the end of the day, broad immigration legislation ultimately derives from the Senate. There are limitations to what the president has wiggle room within the implementation of Senate legislation once it passes into law, but he's not the one who passes the law. So I think her criticism is more of him as a political leader here. But this is great. It's candid. She's endorsing him. She's probably not crazy enthusiastic about it. She would probably prefer somebody like a Bernie Sanders be president, but she knows this is the time in which she lives. Joe Biden is the president. He stands the best chance of reelection out of anybody in the Democratic Party, probably the best chance of defeating Donald Trump should he be the Republican nominee, which he very likely will. And she doesn't want to rock the boat. She is becoming more of a pragmatist, which is not mutually exclusive from a progressive. She still has progressive aspirations. She is a loud critic, like somebody who pushes. She and the Progressive Caucus have successfully pushed the Biden administration multiple times. As we talked about, Biden is, at his heart, an institutionalist moderate. But because he knows he can't afford to alienate AOC, Bernie Sanders, and progressives in the House and in the Senate, he has ceded to many of their demands over time. So that's good. It's good that she pushes him, Mr. President. No, you need to go leftward. You need to go bigger. You need to go bolder. And hopefully, should President Biden win re-election, which he hopefully will, we will see progressives continue to push the president in a more progressive avenue and address the structural issues that plague this country, probably most prominently the Supreme Court.